All right, woof woof, everyone. I want to talk about this year's summer camp, which is going to be focused on die less often. So a little bit about how I see dog brother martial arts and where the die less often material fits into it. What first attracted me to Kali was its sense of walking as a warrior for all your days. The stories in Guro Filipino martial art books about Manong Lacoste and the other masters in there. I was greatly impressed by the old men who walked as warriors for all their days. This resonated very strongly with me with my experiences growing up in New York City during a very violent era. Uh, violence at school was a thing, violence on the subways was a thing, violence walking the streets was a thing. And so, unlike a lot of martial arts, which are essentially about young male ritual hierarchical combat, um, my interest was more like, okay, I remember those three junkies who were coming after me at 3 in the morning on the elevated subway in the far reaches of the Bronx after I dropped off Yolanda. Different skill set, different problem set. Always very relevant to that. And I was very much taken by the notion that the motions of the empty hands are like the motions of the weapons. And as I evolved over the years, as a double stick fighter, that made more sense to me. This is a story I've told elsewhere in the sense of fighting with two sticks. The promise of the art being manifested empty hand, just like the weapons, is someone who fights principally with one stick. That's a tougher trick, I think. Whereas with two sticks, the same movements start making more sense. And so now I take those same movements, and there are certain tremendous advantages to thinking about things in this way. Among them is if I have two hands on one side of my body, just like with two sticks, I have two hits with one shift of body weight. So with boxing type punches where we're hitting with this surface of the hand, every punch requires a shift of body weight. And so speed in combination is dependent on speed and shifting body weight. Mike Tyson does this really well. His combinations are really formidable. But with Kali, we are not limited to four-handed thrust, straight, curved. Those are the punches of boxing. But if we have two sticks, we can now get two hits for one shift of body weight. And so as far as our opponent, our adversary is concerned, we're doubling our speed. The issue, of course, is what about this side of my head? For that, we have the third hand of Kali. So motions such as this. I want to be able to move like this. These are all motions that I've learned and developed through my double stick training. And so I think they apply a lot. And we adrenalize these movements in the Kali Tudo. It's important that we adrenalize our skill sets. We are typically in DBMA working in the ritual space, but we are preparing for the real world. So that we're in search of the totality of ritual and reality. And so by getting familiar with actually sparring pretty hard or even fighting with the Kali Tudo, for example, we see this in the Kali Tudo series. You can see what the movement looks like, where it fits in the context. And the idea, though, is that having done that, that now prepares us for the third area, which for me is the ultimate area of dog brother martial arts, which is die less often, the interface of gun, knife, and empty hand. And so we do not want to be limited to, oh, I fight with a 31-inch stick. I fight with a 28-inch stick. I fight with a 36-inch stick, too specialized. We want to be able to adapt and improvise. We can work with anything that we pick up in the environment. Right? We want to have the we want to be able to pick up a staff. Like this. We want to be able to do these different type movements. Now, this is a staff of probably 5 feet. Some of those movements, I'm worried about hitting the dog here, so my movement's not really good. Boom, here like this. Some of those movements are not really going to apply very well with a longer staff. This is a 6-footer. Again, my movement's off a little bit. The dog's right here happily chewing on a stick. If I have to, been doing the big motion here, the Malayu, that's not going to work so well. So for staff fighting in a dog brothers gathering, one of the things we have For B Krabong, we would have what we call the thirds grip, 3 equal lengths. But there's also one roughly like this, which we call shotgun game. We can be working pretty well with this end. We got the butt stroke here. And so we call this the shotgun game, which enables us to use a shotgun for intermediate force kind of situations. So for example, if I'm having a conversation with some hostile people who are thinking about closing in on me, the bayonet has that certain get off my lawn quality to it. And so the same motions that I was working where my hand is here like this, I can persuade somebody you really don't want to come in. The wrapping jabs that we saw on the staff DVD, the thrusts that we saw on the staff DVD, and so forth, of course, the butt strokes and so forth. So I have a whole idiom of movement that I've trained adrenally with my staff work, which also applies to the shotgun as an impact or thrusting or cutting weapon. Of course, we can shoot with it too. With things like this, and also we want to be thinking about blades. We want to be able to get them in our hand. We want to be able to protect our head as we are dealing with somebody younger, bigger, stronger, meaner, crazier than us, what we call malevolent Mongo. Some of you have heard my stories about this. We also want to be able to deal with what I call a cranky crowd of scurrilous scum. If you think of some of the political riots of the summer of 2020, where you have people who are what we call panhooters, and then we have people who are looking to use the distractions of such people to sneak up behind you and conk you on the head. How do you effectively use your small pocket knife to create a bubble around yourself, your reactionary gap, the time and distance that you need to effectively keep yourself safe? And then worse yet, where you have a team of people, a bunch of guys who've worked together, they're working with purpose to bring you down. How do you do that? What are your movements? Are you keeping distance? Are you looking scary if you can? Psychological range. Are you backing somebody up? If they get in your way, well, sucks to be you kind of a moment. And we also want to be able to think about how the same motions that I come up to, this is the Chupacabra game that I'm showing here in this moment, that same Dracula motion that we have worked so much in our empty hand. We saw this kind of stuff and Die Less Often 4, and we see that with the knife, that same draw stroke applies for close quarter and coming out with the pistol. We want to be able to work here like this. If we have to work our way through a crowd with a gun, which we might, we want to have idioms of movement that allow us to work through the gun without the gun being exposed. These are examples of some of the things that we are thinking about with Less Often. And so at the camp this year, 2 people helping me out are going to be Guro Splinter dog, Antone Haley. Not widely known, but I would put him as one of the 3 best that have passed through my hands. And he is also the 2-time national tactical games champion, which is a very interesting endeavor. He's San Francisco PD. He's a defensive tactics instructor for them. He's writing their manual. He is my mentor. He is one of my mentors in things regarding firearms. It was his insight regarding knives that got me started on the path that led to the Akita knife and the Shiba knife. This is the Akita. And so this is a larger knife designed more for infantry, where you can transfer to the other hand, to the other grip and so forth. Or you can come back to here like this. And there are games for if the pistol goes bang and it goes click instead of bang, transferring to the knife. And then when it's time to, you no longer need the knife and it's time to get the gun back in business, how do you do that without putting the knife away? It's Antone really provided the key insight in how to go about that. We also have the smaller knife. How do we carry, if we have to carry a fixed blade in civilian circumstances, semi-concealed, semi-unconcealed, or concealed, how do we go about that? And we also want to very much have anti-knife skills. And in this regard, particularly valuable is going to be the 3rd man of the team this year is going to be the legendary, the man himself, Dogzilla. And for those of you who don't know, Dogzilla, after he was a U.S. Marine, he was a federal corrections officer for 33 years. And he was the leader on, I really should learn the proper term for it. I just call it the special events team, when you have to drag somebody out of a cell and he doesn't want to come. If there's a riot, and he, as a cook in the Marines, the battle cry was death from within, which led to his also, when wildness was not going on in the prison, he was running the kitchen, which is a very weapon-rich environment. And with the hunting of convicts and so forth, and shanks and all the weapons that are naturally available in a kitchen, this is a man of tremendous experience and insight in these things. You've seen him as an original dog brother. For me, close personal friend, as is Antone. And he would come to class with very particular questions. He says, Mark, how would you fight with a mob? And I thought about it. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, a big institutional mob, it's got all this weight at one end and this awkwardness at one end. What would you do? And I said, what happened to work today, Mike? And so he tells me this story. He says, well, this guy was mopping the floor, and this other guy started bothering him, so he snapped the mop head off, leaving a jagged end. And with the jagged end, he went at the guy like this, and then he swept the leg, and as the guy was on the floor, he stabbed him, and it went in one cheek and out the other. And I said, well, that's what you do. These are the kind of stories that Mike would bring to class, questions that Mike would bring to class. Another favorite of mine is, Mark, what would you do with a guy 5'10", 240, all muscle? He's naked and he's covered with soap, and he has a taped razor blade between his teeth, and he wants to bear hug you and rip up your throat. And I go, what happened at work today, Mike? And Mike, because I had no answer, but there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of hard-won experience there. He's alive to tell the tale, very Darwinian process there. And with regard to that, how would you fight with a mop question? That led me to, I went to Guro with that one, and, due to, the direction that he gave me and so forth, the idea that I came up with was this. It could be a mop, it could be a rake. If you don't have time to snap the mop head off, if I'm out here trying to use the length of this weapon, it's slow, it's awkward. If I'm choking up, I've got good stuff here, but it's short. But what if it's a mop that, not a weapon? If it's a mop and I'm at this end, that's awkward. And so the idea is that we take the mop, the rake, rake would be very awkward as well, and we put it here like this. And so now this is not so much for a staff fight, although there are things I'm going to show in a moment that we can do that. But we have, for an unarmed person, we have a jabbing and thrusting game followed up here like this. There's more, but I'm just giving the idea here in this moment. As we go to staff, I can be doing this, and Sano game, but this is mop game. Boom, boom, foot, roof block. Now I can come into other things. So I want to be able to transition between all these different structures. And so mop game, shotgun game are all part of the staff fight. And this is where we start preparing ourselves for the die less often space in the adrenal fighting of the ritual space. But for the die less often, the subject here, we're going to be working some of these ideas here in the context of die less often, particularly knife and anti-knife. It's been a while since I've shown the definitive statement of how that material has evolved, and this camp is going to be where we do that. So it's going to be May 31st through June 2nd at Guro Guard Dog Ryan Groom School in State College, PA. He's hosted us there many times. Wonderful facility. It's I think a 2-hour drive from Pittsburgh or from Philadelphia. There's a local airport you can fly into. You can stay at the gym, comfortable mats, nice bathroom, showers, and so forth. So that's a way of keeping budget down. We're well familiar with, giving you recommendations for what hotel to stay and so forth. Very pleasant area. Being a large college town, there's some decent food. There's a particular Vietnamese restaurant that we usually have dinner at on Saturday nights and so forth. So hope you can make it. We think it's going to be pretty special.